Welcome back. I'm Lynda Kinkade. Good to have you with us. Well, the week is starting with another whirlwind of moves from the Trump administration. Any moment now, President Trump is expected to sign another series of executive orders. Mr. Trump is also launching a new round of tariffs that will hit U.S. neighbors the hardest. Later today, the White House will announce a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports. Canada and Mexico are two of the largest exporters of steel to the U.S. The president is also promising to reciprocate tariffs against China and other countries later this week. We want to go now to the White House and CNN's Kevin Liptak, who joins us now live. Good to have you with us, Kevin. So just a week after U.S. researchers revealed that microplastics are being found in people's brains at unexpectedly high levels, we understand Donald Trump will soon sign an executive order to overturn the ban on single-use plastics, the type of plastics that are found in our food chain. Just explain why.
Yeah, and I should just say this has been a massive cultural issue in the United States for the last decade or so. President Trump really fixated on this idea specifically about plastic straws. He sort of has used it on the campaign trail back during his 2020 run for president. He was selling plastic straws, saying to get rid of the liberal paper straws, and now that seems to be culminating in this executive order that he plans to sign today. And I should say that the details of this, we don't have them yet. We don't have the text of the executive order, so it's not clear specifically what his authority will be, but the thinking goes that he will overturn what the Biden administration had tried to do, which was end the use of single-use plastics in the federal government. The American federal government is the largest consumer of those kinds of goods really in the entire world, and the hope among the Biden officials was that by doing that within the federal government, it could prompt larger industry-wide changes. Now Trump seems to be saying that that's going away. He has specifically talked about straws. He hasn't talked about the other types of single-use plastic that this order applies to. So we'll have to see exactly what the text says. But I think this is clearly meant to sort of rally his own supporters and rally his base, who, in his words, were sick of using the disgusting paper straws that dissolved in your mouth when you were trying to drink. That has been sort of his rationale as he moves forward this. But we'll have to see exactly what he signs later today.
And of course, we are expected to hear, Kevin, about his 25% tariff on metals, which of course will hit the U.S. neighbors, Mexico and Canada, just really the hardest. And the timing of it is interesting, just a week after saying that he'd put on hold all the other blanket tariffs that he'd announced a week ago, put on hold those ones for a month, right?
Yeah, and just when Canada and Mexico thought that they had had a reprieve from these Trump-era tariffs, now it seems as if they will be applied on some of their biggest imports, particularly for Canada, which is the largest importer of steel and aluminum into the United States. We'll have to see exactly what they say. Now, during Trump's first term, he also applied tariffs on metals. They were at something of a lower rate, but what he did back then was allow countries to apply for exemptions, and in fact, Canada and Mexico both received exemptions when he signed a broader North American trade agreement. What's not clear this time around is whether any countries will be exempted. I think what Trump's trying to do here is bolster what has been a key constituency for him. You know, the American steel industry, it's headquartered in Pennsylvania. That's a critical electoral battleground. That's a place that the president campaigned very heavily last year. And certainly this is all tied up in some ways into the politics of the United States. I think the other sort of indirect target here is China. China won't be directly affected by these in any major way. China's not a major import or exporter of steel or aluminum to the United States. But part of what the administration is trying to do here is counter what they say has been overcapacity issues with Chinese steel. China essentially flooding the world with its own inexpensive steel, which has caused prices of American steel to plummet. Part of what Trump is trying to do here is to rewrite the entire global steel trade to focus on United States steel workers, and certainly we'll hear him talk more about that later today.
All right, Kevin Liptak at the White House, keeping very busy for us. Thanks so much. Well, we're going to look at the wider geopolitical implications with CNN economics and political commentator Catherine Rampell. She's also an opinion columnist at The Washington Post. Good to see you, Catherine.
Great to join you.
So Donald Trump claims tariffs are the way forward. He says he loves tariffs. Other nations say tariffs simply hurt consumers. He has promised, certainly through his campaign, to bring down the cost of living. But don't tariffs risk raising prices and fueling inflation?
Yes, these objectives are definitely in tension right now. If you look at what happened during Trump's first term, where he did apply a relatively wide array of tariffs for the time, but relatively narrow by today's standards, given what he's levying or considering at the moment. Um, there have been tons of studies that have done looking at who bore the cost of those taxes, because tariffs are a form of taxes. And for the most part, they have found that those tariffs were borne either entirely or predominantly by Americans, in the sense that American consumers may have had to pay higher prices, and or American businesses throughout the supply chain had to absorb those higher costs and take margin hits. Maybe the businesses themselves took a little bit of a margin, passed on some of the costs, but in any event, the pain was borne predominantly by Americans. Not to mention the retaliatory tariffs that you have also been discussing that other countries levied in response. Those targeted not US consumers per se, but a lot of important US businesses. Farmers, manufacturers, motorcycle manufacturers, producers of orange juice, peanut butter, all sorts of iconic American products, including those situated in red states that may be more politically sensitive to Donald Trump. So if he is trying to bring down costs, or at the very least get inflation to plateau, these measures are extremely unlikely to have that effect, and in fact may, backfire.
Have the opposite effect, exactly. Catherine, I want to play some sound from Donald Trump in an interview he gave Fox News on Sunday, when he was asked exactly that, about his promise to lower the price of groceries. Take a listen.
If all goes to plan, when do you think families will be able to feel prices going down, groceries, energy, or are you kind of saying to them, hang on, inflation may get worse until it gets better?
No, I think we're going to become a rich. Look, we're not that rich right now. We owe $36 trillion. That's because we let all these nations take advantage of us. Same thing, like $200 billion with Canada. We owe 300. We have a deficit with Mexico of $350 billion. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to let that happen.
So, Catherine, he completely sidestepped the answer. I certainly didn't talk about the price of eggs. What does that tell you?
I think it tells you that whatever mandate Americans thought that they voted for when they put Trump in office, it is being disregarded. Again, Trump ran on this promise to lower prices on day one. I have been saying quite consistently that presidents have very disposal to bring prices down. But in his particular case, again, he seems to be doing the opposite. When he is asked about this point blank, as you note, he deflects, he changes the subject. And a lot of the numbers, by the way, that he invoked in that particular interview were bogus. Those numbers do not actually reflect the size of our trade deficits with Canada or these other countries. And even if they did, that tells you nothing about the living standards here in the United States. It just means that we're buying a lot of stuff from abroad, and Americans get to keep that stuff, and we get to send these other countries cash or paper of various kinds in exchange. So I think that Americans have a right to be very frustrated by the fact that he seems to be abandoning the promises that he made, and perhaps worse, making the problems even more painful.
Catherine Rampell, always good to have you on the program. We will chat again soon, no doubt. Thank you. Well, 3 weeks into his presidency, Mr. Trump isn't just arguing with America's largest trading partners, he's also shaking things up in federal agencies as he and Elon Musk try to slash the size of the government workforce. This hour, a federal judge in Boston is considering the Trump administration's offer to buy out roughly 2 million federal employees. The judge is hearing arguments in a lawsuit brought by workers' unions. They're challenging the so-called fork in the road plan put forward by Musk and his allies. Last week's Thursday's deadline for employees to accept their deferred resignation offer was paused as the legality of that program is worked out. Well, still to come tonight, France is hosting global and tech leaders for an AI summit. We're going to take you live to Paris next. Plus, a sign of the times, Christie's announces its first auction dedicated entirely to artwork made with AI. Stay tuned.